MomoCon. It's Atlanta's answer to Comic-Con. You won't want to miss it.
All right, everyone. All right, we're going to start with our next interview. We have the Captain Zero, executive producer and creator for the series. So first question from the outlets.
Hi, I'm Joy with Moana Nui Podcast. The first question I have for you is, can you give us a little bit of background of how Captain Zero came to be? Like, what was the impetus for it?
Got you. So Captain Zero actually emerged from a depressive episode that I had when I was 18 years old and I just moved to Orlando, Florida. I just started college, Full Sail University, where I got my bachelor's degree in film. It was, again, just a very, very tumultuous time. Like I was first time being away from home, first time, having my own responsibilities. At that time, I had already been diagnosed with major depressive disorder at 17. So I was already like a year into my diagnosis. But again, this is still very early on. So this is like 2015. I had no immediate friends or family members that knew even where to start the conversation surrounding mental health. So the idea emerged from, again, just a really, really bad depressive episode. And in that moment, I kind of felt plagued with like two choices. I could either do something that I felt would be destructive, or I could do something that felt constructive. And because art was always something that I'd loved since I was a kid, I'd been drawing since I was 5 years old, I was like, you know what, let me just take everything that I'm feeling right now and put it into something. And initially, the idea behind Captain Zero was really just supposed to be about me getting my diagnosis at 17 years old and navigating what that was like as, a Black teenager. That's the initial conception of what it was supposed to be about. But as the time, went on, I started thinking about all the various different influences, the things that I loved growing up, which was animation and cartoons and superheroes and stuff like that. Static Shock, Justice League, the animated series, Spider-Man, the animated series, X-Men, the animated series, Batman, the animated series. All of those were really, really big and pivotal for my childhood, stories that I absolutely love. So then I was like, yeah, you know what? The other thing that I also thought about was, again, super huge, big fan of Static Shock. And I remember when Static Shock went off air in 2005, I was like, dang, so like, are they going to make like another movie or another thing or like something? And I was just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and nothing happened. So it was just like, okay, if y'all aren't going to tell what this story is, or what it would be like to tell the story of a modern Black kid who's trying to navigate all these kinds of things, then I'll do that. And then, yeah, that's where I conceptualized it.
So just piggybacking off of what you just the end point, like why did you feel that there was a need to tell that specific story?
At that particular point in time, I felt the best way to describe it is I felt voiceless.
Mm.
It felt like everything that I was experiencing at that point in time, again, because it was 2015, there were no conversations about mental health. It literally felt like I was screaming into a void, or I just seemed like a very unhinged, crazy person. I just didn't know what to do with all of the pent up, bottled up feelings and emotions that I was going through. So I was like, I need to get this out. More than anything, Captain Zero was about a cathartic release for me. I was like, I need to get this out. I need to say what it is that I feel, because I just feel so misunderstood. I don't think anyone understands me. So I wanted to create something that was like, if you've never experienced mental health issues, if you don't know what depression or anxiety is like, if you just watch this thing or look at this thing, you'll be like, oh, okay, I get what that's like. I can see what it would be like for someone to experience that, or what it's like for that to be in someone's head. So for me, that's why it was really important.
And I also think it's important just to keep moving the conversation forward.
Mm.
Like there's still a yes, it's
Yeah.
more open now, but there's still a stigma, especially
I'm
in the
black
Black
men
community.
in black
men.
masks, like I'm a non-binary person, but I was obviously raised socialized male. And I knew that telling this story, I was like, Black men, young Black men are really, really the ones that need to see, one, first and foremost, it's okay to seek help. And that, when you go to these spaces, there actually is reprieve that you can get. Don't bottle it all inside. Talk to someone, get out these feelings, get out these emotions, do it in a space that's constructive. There are people, there are support systems for you if you know where to look. And I wanted to create something that, again, would kind of be like the medicine inside the applesauce, something that could be entertaining for people to watch, but also had that underlying message.
Mac Jenkins, Moana Nui Podcast as well. looking at a few of the projects that you all have upcoming, I noticed in a couple of the synopses, whichever one is the right one, if I'm
I got you.
that the position of certain things coming out of therapy sessions,
Yeah.
being as prominent as it is in the synopsis, for a young Black man. You just covered that, and I think that's just wonderful and beautiful. The actual second part of the question I was going to ask was, did you get a lot of pushback as you were trying to get the production going and getting everything done? Was there a lot of pushback of people saying, well, nobody's going to want to see the story of Black men in therapy, or you've got too many Black and brown people in your project? Why aren't there some other,
Oh yeah.
non-Black and brown people in your project?
Oh yeah, for sure.
The Black kid from Atlanta who loves superheroes, I love the fact that your stuff, again, what I've seen of it, I can't wait to see it on the big screen.
Yeah.
I love the fact that it's as Black as it is.
Yes, for me, that was very, very important. I wanted to show that Blackness wasn't monolithic, even in the various depictions of, because something that I explored, like when I initially created the show in 2015, there were more non-Black characters, but the more and more I grew with the story and grew with the characters, I was like, well, I think I want to tell a very specific story about my unique experience. And again, also coming to the realization that like Blackness is not a monolith, and Blackness is so multifaceted. Like, Xerxes is, a dark-skinned child of immigrants. That's a very specific Black experience. His best friend, Butterfly Girl, she's a polyethnic Black woman. Her father's Black, her mother's German, but she was raised, primarily with her father, so she has a very strong connection to her Blackness and her lived life personal experience. But she is still a polyethnic Black woman, and that in itself is a very specific experience. You have the character Oblivion, who's a Black trans woman, and that in itself is a very specific Black experience. But what I wanted to show was not just the various different facets of Blackness, but also the intersections of it all. Like, there's so much infighting that people want to make about the various different kinds of, again, intersections of Blackness. And what I wanted to show is that, like, all of this is the Black experience. All of this is worth talking about. And all of this, again, is valuable. And yes, to your point initially, there was blowback in the beginning when I first started, shopping the show around in 2017. Some of the comments that we would get was like, oh yeah, this seems really cool and interesting, but we feel like it would only play towards a specific audience, and we're looking for something that's more, broad. And my response to that would always be, a great story is always universal in its message. I grew up with my favorite superhero being Spider-Man. I'm not white. But I related to his experience about being a young, nerdy kid who was just trying to figure it out. And for me, I'm like, Xerxes' story is something that's universal. What average teenager in today's world isn't dealing with anxiety, isn't dealing with depression, isn't dealing with social pressures of wanting to, stand out and be something? These are universal ideas. So I really started to center myself in the idea of, no, I really want to tell the story from this vantage point, because yes, even though the characters are predominantly Black, its message in itself is something that's universal. And I want more people to come in instead of feeling like we have to go out.
You mentioned earlier that the writing of Captain Zero, or the beginning of it, was cathartic for you. Like you had to get this out. You mentioned using your art as a method of expressing yourself. And as another person who just has seen humanities and arts taken out of so much of our education process, what do you hope that people will take from this work? Like, what message, you mentioned the message, what do you hope for them to pick up from, especially someone that may be 16, 17 right now and struggling? What would you want them to get from this?
More than anything, that they're not alone. I think very oftentimes depression, it's a vicious cycle. It can make you feel like I'm the only person in the world that's ever felt this way. And what I wanted to show more than anything is like, no, you're not the only person in the world that's ever felt this way. Other people feel this, have gone through this, are going through this, and that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. But also, again, all of the various different ties and messages of Captain Zero, the importance of mental health, Blackness not being a monolith, and then also Black history and why that was very important. Something that, we talk a bit more about in the feature film version of the project compared to the short is the origin of hyperhumans and how they became what they became. And I based that origin off of the story of Henrietta Lacks, a story that a lot of people don't know about, but if you do know the story, you do know the knowledge about, how the HeLa cells, the immortal cell line, we basically make a remixed version of that and say that that was the impetus of how all hyperhumans were created and the reason why all hyperhumans in Captain Zero's universe are predominantly Black. So I wanted the show to also have all of these other elements that would tie back into history that would make people go, oh, that's interesting, or that's curious, and be like, well, that's actually based off of a real thing that really happened, or is happening. So all of these messages, I feel like, are the things that make Captain Zero, really, really important.
Last question.
What projects, what things do you have on the horizon coming up soon? And how can people find you to get deeper into your work?
So we have a short film that we just finished. We just got accepted into Tribeca, which is super, super dope. After that, we have a feature film, which we're currently in pre-production for. We're looking to start production in July. The goal after that is to release in 2027 and then follow up with an animated series. And then there's a whole host of other animated projects that we'd like to make. Again, for me, cutting edge animation, I really, really want to bring back 2D animation. Again, the stuff that I grew up watching, the stuff that I feel like is the bedrock of what makes animation really, really great. And yeah, I'll kick the rest over to Chris, where you can find us and the other stuff.
You can find us at Captain Zero TAS pretty much on all social media platforms. And the website, cuttingedgeanimation.com.